Welcome in, my friends. I'm Teddy Ninja.
What's going on, everybody? I'm Blade.
And we're talking Snap. This is episode 2 of Talking Snap, and today we have a super interesting discussion. Everybody on the Reddit Blade loves talking to me, crying about the worst cards, what's beating them up, what needs to be nerfed. Right before the patch dropped, it was just like text running like XQC's chat of what needs to be nerfed. But I want to talk about what needs the biggest buff, because there's a couple losers out there, and the devs are very hesitant to be able to buff things. In the patch notes, it's always nerf, nerf, nerf. So let's pick out what the worst cards are. Who needs the biggest buff? We have a list of 8 cards on screen here. Baron Mordo, Quake, Kingpin, Nakia, Electro, Rockslide, Crystal, and Black Bolt. Do you have a front runner out of these of what's the saddest card, Blade?
I think I'm going to put my money behind Baron Mordo right now.
All right. Here's the thing. I'm playing Baron Mordo in one of my favorite decks, but it feels bad. But we'll get to maybe why I'm doing that later and why I shouldn't be doing that. I would love to see Baron Mordo get so much better. I don't know, Quake is just so unplayable. My money might be behind Quake taking this one. And it's going to be interesting because we're going to set this up as a little bit of a bracket where we're going to play the cards close in cost against each other. So Baron Mordo is actually going up against Quake in the beginning. This is a great segue to our initial discussion. Baron Mordo versus Quake, who is worse? And then we'll go on through Kingpin versus Nakia, Electro, and we're going to hop over to Rockslide, cutting up in cost, like up against the 4 cost, and then it'll be Crystal, Black Bolt. So, Baron Mordo, on reveal, your opponent draws a card, increase its cost by 1. Is this usable in any deck?
I mean, it's usable in almost any deck. The only problem is the card advantage you're giving your opponent isn't worth the 1 energy increase.
So it's important to note, right, that he has the distinction of it's versus Iceman, right? You would want to play Iceman to get the energy control similarly, but Baron Mordo is letting them draw the card. He doesn't have the stipulation Iceman of not being able to go over 6.
Yes.
So you could hit their 6 cost card and make it 7 cost and then unplayable in a normal gameplay situation.
And if you could do that reliably, that would be awesome.
Right, but now you're doing it in 1 in 12 games,
Yeah.
right?
If that, and that's if your opponent's even playing any 6s.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's rough. And like the disruption is like decent, but again, like 1 energy disruption in favor of giving your opponent a card. And in a game where there's such little card draw that you can do intentionally and like controlling, a card is huge value, and it's not worth 1 energy.
Right, when you get 1 card draw naturally, and there are no thinning cards. Really, you have Jubilee, right? But she doesn't pull to hand, she pulls to a board. So without other cards that are giving us draw mechanics, yeah, you're giving your opponent a lot at only 1 increase, and then his stat line is just thoroughly average. There's the Baron Mordo. On the Quake side, we have a character that's a 2/3. You play her to the middle location only, she's been changed, and then she swaps the locations, and that's it. I felt like I should have said something more at the end of that, but no, that's all she does.
That's it. That's all.
We were theory
You
crafting
tried
a
Quake
little
all
bit.
yet?
I have not played her at all. I've not seen her hit the board. I've never seen her hit the board once, not even from District X. I assume my opponent at some point, I've played so many games through District X, has had Quake in hand and chose not to play it.
I think I've seen her 1 time.
Okay.
Like 1 time. And I don't think it did anything. I mean, like, obviously, it physically moved the locations.
Yes.
But I don't think it had any impact on the game whatsoever.
Yeah.
And just, like, you recently told me before when we were queuing up this list, because I've never played her, it's not even a consistent location rotation. It's random.
Right. Yes.
So you can't even try and set up a bad combo with her. It's just like there's nothing you can do there.
It hurts so much. We were thinking there is a world, like the glimmer of hope. The light at the end of the tunnel is you're playing her with Storm. You gain tempo on the off side of the board. You set up Storm, and then you basically do this fake your opponent out thing where you play Quake to shuffle Flooding to lock them out of somewhere where you're already ahead. It doesn't feel great.
You're hoping your opponent plays nothing on turns 1 and 2, possibly even turn 3, until they see you play Storm, and then they go like, oh snap, I need to play something into flooding. So they play something on turn 4. And that's really your only hope, is that they skipped turns 1 through 3 and didn't react until you played Storm, because now your turns 3 and 4 were so weak and tempo loss and just low power that your turns 1 and 2 would have to make up for your turns 3 and 4, and that's not likely to happen. So, yeah, it's like you're really hoping for a very specific opponent and very specific set of circumstances.
Yeah, exactly, because in this world, you need the tempo on the other side of the board, but then you're passing your turn 3 to be able to play Storm, and then you're also finding a way to play Quake, which is not like a very powerful point-wise card.
At the middle location only as well.
Yes. I'm going to throw on the cherry on top of the cake. The only other time I hear people talking about Quake is that there is a bug with the Mystique, the Wong Onslaught infinite loop shenanigans where she will absolutely crash your game. The locations will continue to spin around until they're off the map, and then you can no longer play.
I did not know that.
This is a real thing. This is a real thing. It has not been patched yet, I believe.
Do you get a win? Actually, maybe it's better if the world doesn't know.
Yeah, it just breaks. I think it kicks you out of. It could either be someone has to retreat at that point, in which case you just do retreat later, and you wait for your opponent to do so, and then it's a draw. But yeah, it breaks it.
Okay, so she has no impact besides literally breaking the game.
Exactly. So we're gonna go up against Quake to Baron Mordo. When District X triggers, do you groan harder on Baron Mordo or Quake? I feel like that's a good litmus test of who the worst card is.
That's tough. I at least feel like there is more likely of a glimmer of hope for Baron Mordo, despite it still being such a low percentage that it's helpful.
Yeah.
There's at least a much higher percentage when we're talking about, like fractions of a percent. Baron Mordo is way likely to not be awful than Quake, I think. And it's surprising me to say that because Baron Mordo is really awful.
Yeah.
But I think he is at least more likely to not be useless.
All right. I tend to agree. I'm running him right now in a deck. Let's see. I'll pull it up. It is a hazmat/hand attack deck where you play Scorpion, you play the draw effects, and then here we go, Baron Mordo. But you can also potentially block the draw with Black Widow, or you get them to draw and then play Scorpion, so it's costs more and is weaker. And then Maximus to also just like big bodies. I don't care. I'm going to flood their hands so they have all the options they could ever want, but I'm trying to outpace them basically. So I think I agree. Quake is worse. I also feel like the only way that Quake comes in is not necessarily a buff, but a rework. I need to see some other effect out of her. Baron Mordo, I would love to see +2 cost on the card. Maybe his power even comes down if he does that, if that's the buff they give him.
Or I don't know. You can't target the highest cost card in the deck because that's too consistent.
Guarantee.
Yeah.
Interesting. Draws a card and increases the cost of the highest card in hand.
That's an option, something like that, or I don't know. There's things you could do with him, and honestly, as bad as he is, the meta right now is so 6 cost focused that you at least have some hope there.
Right.
So there might be some small tweaks. I honestly even think you could leave the bad effect and just give him more stats. Maximus is playable, and you're giving your opponent 2 cards just because
you're getting a 3/7.
Such guaranteed high stats. So you could do something similar with Mordo. He could be a 2/4. He could probably even be a 2/5 because you're given a card, and cards are so valuable.
Yep.
I think there's an easier path to playability for him versus Quake, who needs either way more location manipulation and plus consistency on her part, or just a completely new effect.
Exactly. So Quake is going to be moving on. We'll knock Baron Mordo off our list here, and we can talk what potential buffs we'd like to see on Quake later because she's advancing. Our next matchup is Nakia versus Kingpin. So Nakia, she used to be the deity in every single deck. Nerfed now to 3-1. On reveal, give 2 cards in your hand plus 2 power. Oh man. It feels bad because she had her time in the sun, right?
Yeah.
To say that now I want her buffed again because I didn't necessarily like the meta where she was everywhere. But I think it was an over adjustment.
I was ready for her to be like gone. Like I was like, I'm done with Nakia. She's in every single deck. Just get rid of her. I don't care if you like nerf her into the ground. But even in my head, into the ground, this was more harsh than what I was planning.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking of like, 2 cost plus 1 power to your hand. Or honestly, at this point, you could have left her at 3 cost plus 1 power to your hand, and I think she's still better than she is right now. Just 2 random cards too. Like you couldn't have done like plus 2 power to your 2 lowest cost cards.
Ooh.
Like
Interesting. Lowest
plan
cost.
for something.
Lowest cost would be an interesting twist. I was about to say, I've seen a random post from the dev answers that they're working or they're thinking about targeted abilities. If targeted abilities come into the game and they just say that Nakia is now targeted, and this is like prepping for that, then she's great because you guarantee the +2 on both your Human Torch and your multiple man. Heimdall loves it. There's a couple other decks that are going to be able to use that. Swarm. What's the one other person likes the really targeted buffs because they double? Deadpool.
Yeah.
But
So,
right
yeah,
now,
you can do that.
right now, if you're still playing, if you go through your deck lists, find the ones that haven't been touched since the balance patch, take Nakia out. It's so
Even if you
good.
just slap Okoye in there, like it's better on average.
It is. It's still Okoye should also be replaced later on, but for right now, you can immediately replace with Okoye. She's going up against Kingpin, who just got buffed. So we're putting a card that was brought down versus a card that got buffed. Pseudo buff. They intended this to be a buff. He was changed so that now 3/4 you play him on turn 6. He will destroy all cards at his location. It used to be on the turn following when he was played.
And that was like, he had a short time in the sun when Bifrost was a thing. You could play him
Exactly
Bifrost.
24 hours.
Yeah. And then even now, like trying to set up his turn 6 with things like Arrow, like you're telegraphing exactly where the movement is going to happen to, so your opponent can stack that lane, and while you can say, yes, you're disrupting your opponent, is it really that disruptive for them to try and win a lane? Like, you need to win 2 regardless.
Exactly.
Your Magneto play is like your best option besides Arrow. Magneto's probably the top play there. But again, if your opponent has a card or 2 there already, they might be able to win. I just feel like you're telegraphing so hard that you want to do something on turn 6 that it's easy to play around, and I feel like your opponent can easily just either play into that lane, or they know that you're going to Magneto to that lane at some point, so they're going to have to prep for it anyway. I feel like even if you took the argument of like it introduces more mind games, I don't think the mind games are strong enough for any potential payoff.
Right, exactly. Now, obviously destroying opponent's cards is an enormous swing, potentially. Is there any world where he lives alongside Gambit? You thin out the opponent's herd just continually? I don't know, because self-discard really doesn't swing with Arrow or Magneto.
Yeah, then you hit your Magneto with your discard and your whole plan's out the window.
Kingpin's dead. What if Kingpin... Now I'm just talking about how he could be buffed. What if Kingpin destroyed all opponent cards that moved on turn 6?
That would at least be a lot better. I mean, that would be a ton better, actually.
That's probably too good, right?
Magneto anywhere, yeah. His effect is a weird one, and maybe the devs think it's one of those ones that, like, their intention is to do nothing besides keep move decks in line one day.
Yeah.
Like, because with the way his effect is currently planned, I feel like it is going to be a black or white, like, this is borderline unplayable or this is way too good, and there's not a lot of gray area to really tweak it too much.
Yeah, locking it into turn 6, it means that the board is going to be in a very set state by the time his effect will trigger. The opponent has a long time to be able to prepare. maybe there's some kind of world where if you've trapped your opponent into trying to fill it up, you have two options, either Magneto if they don't, or some other card that doesn't exist yet to hurt them if they did. But I'm not sure what that is yet.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, then your other option is like, if your opponent completely ignored a location, you could try and like Kingpin plus Juggernaut to kick things from a different location into the Kingpin location.
Yeah.
But again, now we're just like grasping at straws, and like, is that really your strongest turn 6 play? 7 total power and hoping to destroy something?
Exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't feel great. It really doesn't feel great. So, Nakia versus Kingpin.
I think Kingpin is probably still the worst card, but I think in terms of overall game health and ability to be buffed, I think Nakia is the choice there.
Interesting. Wow.
Just because I don't think you can, outside of like a more in-depth rework, I don't think you can buff Kingpin much more without making him miserable to play against.
Yeah, the destroy effect, as I said, it gets out of hand very quickly. Potential of just enormous ceiling here. Outside of like rework territory where he becomes a lot more easy to destroy cards, but he can only destroy lower cost cards or something of this kind. All right. I think I'm going to agree that so this means that Nakia is gonna move on in the bracket. We'll take Kingpin off the list. He lives at his current state unhappily.
Rest in peace.
And now we got some fun ones. Our 2/4 costs: Rock Slide versus Crystal. Crystal here, mirroring in many ways Quake, has to be played to the middle location. She is a 4/4. And when played to the middle location, you discard your entire hand. Or no, you don't discard it. You just draw a new hand and it goes back. Your hand goes back into your deck. If it was discarded, that's a whole different thing. You just draw new cards. 3 new cards specifically, and then you'll get your 4th one as part of the turn draw. Rock Slide 4/6, coming in a little bit heftier, gives your opponent 2 rocks. Rockside is so sad. He's coming in at turn 4 and he only gives 2 rocks. Meanwhile, we're looking at locations. They give you 3 rocks if you play there, 5 rocks if it flips over.
Yeah.
Korg, his little brother, is giving 1 rock for 1 cost. He's a 4 cost. He doesn't even give 4 rocks. I mean, this Rockslide has to have more rocks to give.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
He's so cool, so it's a shame. And like, he's almost kind of decent. Like, if you can hit on curve guaranteed, Korg on 1, Rock Slide on 4.
Yeah.
You almost guaranteed to screw up at least one of your opponent's draws.
For sure.
Which makes the 2 of them worth it at that point.
You think that it's worth it, playing the 1/2 and the 4/6 to give your opponent 1 rock?
I think it's almost worth it. Korg as a 1/2, it's fine. You know, 1s are pretty weak in general besides the scaling ones. Like, I don't mind playing a 1/2 with potential upside. You do something similar with Iceman. That's a much more tangible upside, and with both of them, you never really, unless your opponent plays the rock, you don't really get the knowledge of how much you affected your opponent.
Right.
Because you don't necessarily know what card you increased in cost unless they play it, and you don't know if they draw the rock unless they play it. So you're kind of just hoping for upside. Rock Slide, additional 2 rocks, you know, make them draw 1 or 2 rocks. I think Rock Slide is like a power or so off. Like, he's quite close.
I think he needs to come out on turn 3.
That would be awesome as well. Like, even if you dropped him by a power and he was 3, I'm on board.
Yeah. I feel like he either needs to give way more rocks or come out early enough to get those extra draws. And he's looking to be able to disrupt these combo decks that really need to draw into pieces. And because, as we said earlier, there's no mechanics of thinning the deck right now intentionally for your own deck, that, he's interesting. I would love to be able to
You could also give him a whole new mechanic, too. Like, you could give Rock Slide, like, a passive, when you play a card in this location, shuffle a rock into your opponent's deck, or shuffle 2 rocks into your opponent's deck.
Exactly.
Then you can give, like, some zoo viability.
Yep.
There's just things there.
Yeah. What if he turns a card your opponent is holding into a rock? And that is a that's a 4/6. I mean, it's very similar to like Moon Knight or Black Bolt at that point, just forcing your opponent to discard, but it's not quote unquote discarded.
Yeah.
So it's even good against the discard deck. Oh man. Okay, so yeah, I want to play Rock Slide. I want to play Rock Slide, Baron Mordo, Korg, Max, have my opponent draw as many of these rocks as they want, and then hit them with stuff like Scorpion and
that would actually feel a lot better too. If you found a way, and you'd probably have to tweak his power, if you swap the cost of Rock Slide and Maximus, I'd be like, that would feel a lot better as well. Because then you could be like, on 3, I give you 2 rocks.
Yeah.
On 4, I give you 2 cards. And there's a pretty solid chance that one of those 2 cards is going to be a rock. So I'm not really as worried about giving you 2 cards.
Yes.
But now, with their cost being flipped, it's just awkward. Because then you play Maximus on 3, they've already drawn the cards, and then
they have their good cards.
Yeah.
And then you give a rocks just at the end of the deck. It's the dregs. It's the the sludge at the bottom of your coffee cup. You don't care. You already have the good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, if Rock Slide got the buff of he gets stronger per rock on the opponent's side of the board, I would be ecstatic.
You can do some debris things there.
Suddenly he's there with debris. Your opponent is holding rocks. You're playing Ronin. They want to play the rocks to make Ronin weaker, but then it makes Rock Slide stronger. It put him in a great spot. Right now, I don't think he's a very fringe, very weak. I don't see him being played. But we've not talked much about Crystal. I feel like Crystal, I think that she's supposed to be in a Mr. Negative deck, where you invert your deck, you play Crystal, you get all inverted cards, or hopefully majority inverted cards. It's a way to access more of those. The thing is that Mr. Negative right now, between Magic and Jubilee, is already thinning his deck basically down to 1 card every game. So I don't know if it needs the 4/4 Crystal, and that's like her only home.
Plus, the 2 downsides of that is Mr. Negative in general, you don't play very many cards until you play Mr. Negative.
Yeah.
You play Psylocke if you have her, you play Sunspot if you run Sunspot, but in general, you're playing nothing until Mr. Negative. So your hand is going to be quite full.
Yep.
The other, and the much larger downside is, you shuffle your hand in first, which means
you draw out
you're
of
trying
those
to
pool
get
again.
those flipped cards, but you might just pull most of your same hand again.
Yeah.
So that leaves like her only like real consistent powerful use of dumping your hand by turn 4, so that you're not shuffling in either anything or maybe 1 card and then drawing 3. So kind of like a true full zoo, and not like a Sarah dump my hand on turn 6 zoo.
Yeah.
But that's just not good enough to see play right now, so she doesn't really do anything. And then I also think that...
Well, you don't have enough space on board to play all these little cards. If you had a 5th slot on board to fit more of your deck, it would work.
Yeah.
But right now, like if I fill up my entire board with 1 cost, I probably still lose. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then like the middle location requirement, I know it was intended to be a buff so that you could not draw if you don't want to. But now, like, you've locked her into the middle, and I feel like it's not the biggest downside, but it is an additional downside on a card that already has so many, and is still just a 4/4 at the end of the day. I know drawing is very powerful, so you can't make her super strong, but if her whole thing is drawing, and there's so many downsides to that drawing, and the only way you can consistently make that drawing useful is to purposely play weaker cards, I don't think it's a payoff that's super useful in general.
Does she work in discard? Like a Hela deck? Does she make Hela more consistent? Is this like the secret thing that will make Hela good that nobody's tried yet? Because you can go willy-nilly on the discard effects as long but it basically means that you can play her to try and get Hela is what I'm saying, because otherwise that deck lives and dies on that key card.
I think it potentially could have been more of a thing before Hellcow's nerf.
Yeah.
Because Hellcow because you could be like, alright, like I don't have Hela, let me slap down Crystal, and then like I can just play Hellcow and something else on 5 if I need to, and then I'll still have discarded enough cards to make Hela worth it.
Right, or you will have played Hellcow on 2, cut your hand to nothing, but then you could have hit Crystal. Yeah. I think Hela's still going to be a high roll.
But you could have at least like hidden Hellcow behind Invisible Woman on 3,
Yes.
and then play Crystal on 4.
Right.
And like to find your Hela, and that's more doable. But now having to do like Hellcow on 4, Crystal on 5, it's kind of a Hail Mary. I guess it's still a fine Hail Mary if you don't have Hela by 6. But I guess in all other games where you do draw Hela, you'd rather Crystal have been another 6 cost to discard, or maybe a different discard card. Maybe you want to try Moon Knight or something.
Yep.
I feel like there's just better options for that slot in your deck.
Yeah, fair enough. I think Crystal does get outclassed in a lot of these. And if it's looking for either consistency or playing out your hand very quickly, you're going to have better 4 costs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this one's hard to call between Crystal and Rock Slide. I think Rock Slide needs the bigger buff.
I selfishly want it to be Rock Slide because I like him so much and play him in so many decks already that
Yes.
I am fully team buff Rock Slide.
Okay. Crystal, guys, take our advice. We just said she could maybe work in Mr. Negative if you have him or her and not other good cards, and maybe she works in Hela Discard. Secret Tech, play it against us, please. I'd love to see how many cubes I can take off you before you sub your deck out. Our final bracket, Electro, Black Bolt. So Electro, 3/2, he gives you +1 max energy. It's always interesting to me that the visual is +2, but they're naturally getting +1. But then you can only play 1 card per turn, and that's the ongoing effect. So is this the only card with, no, it's not the only card with on reveal and ongoing, is it? Or is it?
I think so.
Okay, so Ebony Maw has a stipulation and then an ongoing, but this is on reveal and ongoing. So, unique trivia for you, and it's bad. It turns out it's bad. On reveal, you get the energy. Ongoing, you cannot play additional cards. There's ways to be able to play around this, right? Enchantress will turn it off. Viper can give it to your opponent. Wong could give you insane amounts of energy. All very fringe cases. I've actually been hit. I've been electrocuted. Is that what we call it? If they play it and then they hit you with the Viper. And
Yes.
I won easily because they've played Electro on 3, and for their 5 energy turn 4 play, they only played Viper because they can only play 1 card. And then I've been able to build up more tempo, and I was also admittedly playing a deck that had some big boys to hang with them. So when it passes over, you don't get the plus energy. You only have the negative. Have you ever been electrocuted?
I've not. I've only ever seen Viper with something like the Hood or things like that. I just think it's kind of similar to, I mean, it's not anywhere near as bad as that Storm Quake scenario we were talking about. But that specific Viper scenario is kind of similar to that, where like
it sounds
Electro's weak on 3.
Yeah.
So you're already taking a tempo loss, and then you're taking a pretty massive tempo loss playing Viper on 4/ your 5 energy.
Right.
So you're basically leaving turns 5 and 6 with 1 extra energy, which in general, you're not going to necessarily get to maximize that much. It's not like you get to play 2 6-drops. Like, that would be worth it for that tempo loss. But, like, is really playing a 4 and a 3 on turn 6 going to be more powerful than your opponent's 6-cost card? You might not even beat their 6-cost card with your 4 and your 3.
Yeah.
It's just the amount of restriction that Electro introduces, and even, like, you play Enchantress on 4/5, not as weak as Viper, that's still a massive tempo loss and not worth the 1 energy gain.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't feel good. It could have been a variant on the Sarah buff Miracle when you had Nakia.
Yeah.
But suddenly you have all this energy and a big hand, and you buff it up, and then your opponent is only able to keep up with you with 1 card a turn. But it just doesn't feel like there's enough ways to be able to catch up after your 3 and 4 are duds.
Yeah. And, like, maybe there's some, like, niche usage if there's ever more cards like Sunspot that get an effect if you're floating energy at the end of your turn.
She-Hulk, rumored ability. She is
That
cheaper
could help.
per unused energy. Obviously broken with Electro because you can only play 1 card anyway, so why would you play a free card when you can play
Doesn't work there.
But if you again, if you electrocute the opponent and then you had all this energy that you didn't spend, you really need Sunspot.
Yeah.
Electro has to be with Sunspot, and then you have to draw Sunspot early for it to be worth it. Bad card.
I've tried to make Electro work. I think he's a really cool card. It's just I find myself like, even if you pack your deck jam-packed with 5 and 6 cost cards, you play your 5 cost on turn 4, best case scenario.
Yep.
Then you play your 6 cost on turn 5. Then you play another 6 cost on turn 6. And you're floating in energy. You didn't really gain that much additional power or tempo from your 1 extra 5 cost or your 1 extra 6 cost. And many of the decks in the meta right now are slapping down multiple 6 cost cards on turn 6 without any restrictions on themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, they have some other way to energy cheat. Yeah, basically, Electro is in a world where Wave does his job but better, and Psylocke does his job but better.
And Hela, and Ghost Rider, and like, go down your list of cards that are cheating out energy, and like, the restriction is not worth it.
If you want to electrocute someone, Sandman does the job better.
Yep.
So, in other words, don't play Electro. You have everything we've just said is better. He's going up against Black Bolt here. 5/7 on reveal, your opponent must discard the lowest cost card in their hand. Black Bolt, I've not seen very much of. Obviously unplayable if you're up against a discard deck. I actually kind of like him. I haven't collected him yet. I can't wait to be able to try him. I feel like Wong into Black Bolt should feel pretty good.
I like him a lot, and I do have him, and he is kind of falls into my Rock Slide bucket of like, I know you're not good for me, but God, if I'm not going to try.
Exactly.
I keep trying, and I think the biggest thing he would need to go in one of two directions. The first is discarding their lowest cost on turn 5 doesn't feel good enough because most of the time they're not playing that card on turn 6 regardless.
Right.
Unless they have 1 card left in hand. So like, he would need to come down a little bit sooner if he really wanted to be disruptive. Or he would need to either target highest, or if that's too strong, target random. Even random is better than lowest. Like, I would play a Moon Knight with no downside for myself.
Right. For some reason, I was thinking that he did target random. Being lowest, yeah. Your opponent probably doesn't care about losing those on their final turns.
And the only time it's good would be if it was discarding Swarm, but if it could ignore the ability. Because the only low-cost card that people are playing on turn 6 is Swarm, and this just happens to help Swarm.
Yeah, it only makes the Swarm angry, is what it does. Gosh. I feel like there's still a world where Black Bolt can headline a deck that's all about attacking your opponent's both card draw and cards in hand. You bring in Black Widow early on. You prevent their draws. Then you hit them with the Moon Knight. Then you hit them with the Black Bolt. Black Bolt obviously not getting any use out of a reactivation from Odin. With Wong, having them lose 2, I feel like that's still nasty.
That at least increases your opportunity that you're hitting something good. Because then at least turn 4 and turn 5, they've probably dumped a lot of their 1 and 2 cost cards. Maybe they're floating 1/2 cost, or maybe they're floating a 3 cost. So like, hitting 2 cards increases your likelihood that you dump their 1 really bad card, and then maybe hit one of their better cards.
Right.
But then even then the issue is you're doing that on turn 5, which 90+% of decks in the game right now want to play a 6 cost on turn 6, if not multiple turn 6 cards. So like, even if you hit a 5 with Black Bolt, if you didn't hit that turn 6 play, it's not really hitting the mark for you. You're getting rid of cards that would not have been played anyway, unless you happen to hit specific combo pieces. Really, the only time I've ever like felt great about Black Bolt is like, I hit Patriot or Mystique in one of those decks.
Yeah.
Other than that, he's just hitting a card my opponent wasn't planning on playing.
Yeah. All right. Well, stay tuned, guys, for when I collect them for the blooper reel of turn 6 discarding a 1 cost and then getting hit with whatever. Yeah. It seems weak. Now, this is actually the perfect counter to Death Wave, right? Because death at the point that wave's been played will be 0.
Yes, but you also need to be revealing second.
Yes, you do.
Which
very nuanced, but it is the perfect counter to the best deck at the moment.
Yes. I just feel like the thing with Death Wave is you're usually revealing first against them because they are so, not weak, but slower until turn 6.
They're waiting to play 2 deaths and then another 6 drop on turn 6, so they don't have any points on board. They don't care. They've destroyed all their board at this point. Self-sacrifice to the Lady of Death that reigns supreme. I still think that Black Bolt is doing better than Electro.
Yeah, absolutely. There's at least potential for Black Bolt to work out, even if it's low chance.
Yep. All right. So that means Black Bolt is knocked out. Electro stays in, contending for the crown of the weakest card, the card most in desperate need of a buff in the game. All right, guys. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Let us know in the comments down below. What's your pick? We had the 8. Was one of them knocked out prematurely? Should one of them have made it in? Or which of these 4 is the actual weakest card of the game? Or if we haven't thought of one, let us know as well. What would you most like to see buffed? Coming in here, Quake, Nakia, Electro, Rock Slide. I think that we've talked a little bit on what buffs we would like to see for all of these. I think our favorite was Rock Slide getting an addition. We're in rework territory for a lot of these. That's how bad they are. We're scraping. Rock Slide we want to see get synergy with rocks on board in some way. I think it's thematic. I think it can also just give him an extra engine to facilitate what could then be his own deck or a new archetype in the game. Electro, we just kind of wanted to see tinkering with when he could be played. Maybe playing. Actually, I don't think we've talked about a full rework for Electro. What would you like to see here?
I mean, since we're in beta territory, I think a worthwhile swing on Electro would be dropping him to 2 energy. So you at least get, 4 turns of that extra energy. I still think he's going to be very bad in that scenario, but I at least think getting him down earlier is worth a shot.
I was like, I want a bigger swing where we take away the limit of only playing 1 card, but you make him like -7. But then I was like, a self-destruction deck just undoes that immediately, and then that's a terrible idea. This is why I'm not a game designer. Maybe if they just made his stats bigger. Maybe if he was not a tempo loss to play himself, and it's just this ramp deck that hits you with first your 1 and 2, and then this big 3, and then it can only play 1 card, but it always has to be bigger than whatever the opponent is playing. I think that's like the identity of the deck that they're going for. And he doesn't live up to it. You lose tempo to catch it up later, but with only playing 1 card, you don't catch up. And so
I think if he got enough of a buff that would potentially give you that opportunity to lose that flexibility the rest of the game.
Yeah.
That's another one where
3-4, 3-5, I think he's already maybe there.
Yeah, I think that's worth a try as well, because then at least, even if you wanted to say whatever, forget it, I'll go do the Enchantress play, because Electro has so much power, I can afford to lose a little bit of tempo, then I still think that is landing in fair territory.
Yeah.
That's how bad he is.
Yeah, just enormous changes here. Nakia, if they bring in the targeted abilities, then she's gold. Yeah. Otherwise, maybe some other stipulation so that through very careful hand management, you can get the buffs on key cards. And most of the key cards right now are cheap, so if she just buffs the lowest cost cards, I think that could bring her in. Add a 3-5 stat line in counting the buffs. It doesn't feel great, but I think it makes her playable in those key decks. Quake again, we're in rework territory here because I don't see a world where I ever play shuffle locations.
At a minimum, you would have to make it consistent, and this would involve a bunch more UI UX as well, because not just shuffle to the right. I'd envision you choose left or right, and then you do that rotation, Even then,
okay.
it's probably not good enough.
You play her, you get the arrows, you
Yeah.
swipe left or right, match or not.
And even that, like, still pretty bad. But,
Yeah.
like, that's the minimum before I start even thinking about her as a card.
That's fair. That's fair. Oh, Quake. I think, yeah, it's something I feel like she would be better off on the rework territory of, similar to Magic, creating designated limbo, create a designated location. I don't know what her location would be or why you would necessarily want to trigger some of these other locations, but maybe they create a unique location similar to flooding for her, a little thematic. She throws out rocks onto both sides of the board. You can try and fill up your side, push the rocks to the opponent's side if they've been slow to match your tempo. Or maybe you're playing Patriot and you can use rocks, or you're playing Self-Destruction and you can use rocks. Yeah, it's ugly over there.
She needs a lot of love. She needs something different.
All right, out of these, I think I'm going to disqualify Nakia. She's had her time in the sun. She's kind of just waiting for a little key change.
Yeah.
Not necessarily raw stats, because we've seen that raw stats is problematic.
And she is weak as a result of her being way too strong.
Yeah.
All of these other cards are just, like, weak.
The community needed the palate cleanser after seeing Nakia in every single game, and snaps after you played her every single game. So, all right, Nakia is off. So we're down to Quake, Electro, Rock Slide. Who is the strongest of the three to give us our two finalists?
As bad as it feels, I think Rock Slide is much stronger than the other two.
I'm tempted to agree, because like I said, I have been electrocuted, which feels like the best play Electro has, and I won easily. Oh man. Quake to Electro.
Now that's the real question. This is a heavyweight matchup.
This is the heavyweights. The heavyweights at the bottom of the barrel. Wow.
I think if you forced an answer out of me right now, I see more paths to tweaking Electro and making him at least interesting to try
Yeah.
without a full rework. And if I feel like my gut is telling me right now, if the only path to viability for Quake is to completely redo the card, I think that's a signal to me that she is far worse than Electro. Because there's
Yes.
at least a path for Electro.
Yeah, if I put it to you another way, the deck building challenge, I like, gun to your head, you have to build a deck including either card.
Both decks are going to be awful, but like I have a plan as soon as you tell me Electro.
Yeah, I have a plan with Electro. I'm at least interested. I'm interested in how many cubes I'm going to lose and how many big 6 costs I can play. So I think we have our winner. I think it is Quake. Quake. Let's
Best
pull
of
you
the
up
worst.
here on the big screen.
Worst of the best.
Yes. We'll have the crown descend of the garbage can crown onto Quake's head. Will she get changed in the latest patch notes? Let the developers know, guys. They've been very responsive. Head over to the Discord. Say, hey, I like Quake. I can't play her. Quake is it does the character from the comics, and like people who enjoy the character dirty, right? They have this.
Yeah.
It
And it's
feels
a shame
terrible.
because like the effect is like flavorful. I think it hits her powers decently. Not like
Yeah.
great, but like decently. It's just not good.
It's on a weak stat line, and the thing is, like, you can argue, oh, but as more locations come to the game, then there could be something that's good. Well, if more locations come to the game, they're so diluted that it's going to be valuable extremely rarely.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe there is something that, if you guys know, if you guys have ever played Quake with like a Storm, or, I mean, it would basically be Storm, right? There's no other location that's really impactful to rotate that you can
control.
control. It has
The
to be
other thing
Storm.
is like maybe you toss her in during certain featured locations, but there's so many cards that you can say like, if this was a hot location, this becomes more playable.
Yeah.
Like there's so many cards, and even specific ones for Quake. There's probably a dozen cards that will play off that location better than she will.
Exactly. She just seems like she needs to have some kind of offensive capability because we already have Rhino to fix bad locations, Scarlet Witch to fix bad locations, and Magic to fix quote-unquote bad locations. I'm running all of them in my current Cerebro deck, and it's fantastic. It's just open planes, 4 slots on everything that I ever want. And Quake doesn't have a job there, so she needs a job somewhere else where I'm playing control and then I surprise my opponent by shifting another restriction on them. But right now, you're losing tempo to do it, and it's just not there.
And there's some pretty cool disruption things she could do, like shuffling around the cards at locations, moving them around, maybe limiting the number of cards that could be played to a location. Maybe now it shrinks it from 4 to 3 or 4 to 2. There's so many things they could do with her that still keeps that same flavor. Just random swaps is not it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think we're in agreement. We're in rework territory with this card to either of us want to play her. So that's where we're gonna leave it. We had our 8 down to 4, down to 2, down to 1. Quake. The next time you draw her in a cache, I don't know. Send a comment. Weep and lament the lost credits to open Quake. Thank you guys for watching our bracket for who is the worst card. Definitively, it is Quake. We've answered the question. Let us know down in the comments if you disagree. It's been a ton of fun breaking this one down. You can subscribe to the channel here to be able to see more deck lists and Marvel Snap content from me. You can also head over to Blade's channel where he's covering a lot more of the game as well. What are you excited for coming up on your channel, Blade?
Keeping the Wheel of Snap train rolling. That's really starting to pick up some steam. Having a lot of fun with that. I'm going to try and do some more beginner-friendly content soon. Maybe some location breakdowns and strategies behind that. But really just sticking to having fun over there. And hopefully over here, some more challenges like this in the future.
All right. You will have to let me know when Quake gets rolled for your deck. Put her on the wheel.
Hopefully never. Maybe that would be a bad option for the wheel.
Put her on the wheel.